Brakes off. Heater on. AC off. Brr, that's cold. What the heck? Put on my warm fuzzy glasses. Reset my timer. Start. So we keep track of our time, even though this is a lump sum bid, because we want to know where we're at. Now we're getting some heat. So I don't even remember where we were loading. I generally just have to drive into the cut and figure out what we're doing here, where we're going. Since it ain't windy, I probably ought to go clear to the other end and start cutting. What do you think? Looks like the water truck came through last night, through the middle of it. You can't even tell though. Hit the load counter, drop the hitch, second gear. We're ready to go. Start on the edges, cut them down. So I know some guys are going to say, Jeff, you're not supposed to load with your hitch on, but I do it anyway. It keeps it from hopping. They pull it down like that, it'll hop with the hitch off. The boys can't do that. Hitches have to be locked down all the time during loading. There we go. Give him a second to unhook and go. It's turning away, then I can turn around. And away we go. And we got dust. So I'm gonna load twice in the same spot because it's right next to the edge, and it's just what you gotta do to keep it tipped. If you don't, you're gonna get tipped to the center of the hole, and you're gonna have to get the cat, straighten it up, rip it. And we're doped. So the right pedal down here is the front engine, the left pedal here is the rear throttle. The front engine is a mechanical linkage because it's a mechanical engine. The rear throttle is nothing but an air regulator. The more you push it, the more air it sends to the rotochamber on the back, which is hooked to the governor. So that's how you regulate your engine speed. It's got a little adjusting nut on it. You got to get it adjusted so that it's pretty well synchronized. So you got an 8-speed semi-automatic up front, reverse, first and second are converter drive, third through eighth are direct drive. The rear transmission is a 4-speed with a converter, and it matches the front one exactly in 2, 4, 6, and 8. In 3, 5, 7, the converter takes up the difference by the slippage in it. Oh, today's my birthday too. So I appreciate those of you that are texting me, telling me happy birthday and all that. I always seem to end up working on my birthday. I've never had the day off. This time of year, we're just busy. So the way the rear engine, or the rear tranny shifts is on the front of the front transmission. There's an electrical clock switch, and it's called the slave switch, or synchronization switch. And as long as the front and rear are synchronized, the loop valve is energized. If they become unsynced, it kills the power to the loop solenoid, which kills the pressure to the transmission. That way it can't shift, you can't do damage. So what it does, you probably hear it in the videos, you'll hear a beep back there. The backup alarm will go beep every time I downshift, because the backup alarm is hooked up to the reverse wire. And so every time it sends a momentary signal to the slave switch on the scraper tranny, it also gets a momentary signal through the backup alarm, so it beeps. So when the tractor shifts from second to third, it sends an electrical signal to the back, goes through the slave switch, sends a signal to the upshift solenoid. As soon as it shifts, it twists the clock contacts and it's synchronized. And then when I go to fourth, it doesn't shift, because the rear tranny has shifted into second gear when I went to third. And then it just does the same thing when you downshift. Sends a signal and it downshifts. And there's a light right here. You'll see it flash every time the rear scraper tranny shifts. That's called the sync light. It tells you that the rear transmission is synchronized with the front. So if the light comes on, you know you got a problem. It's got a toggle switch here. It's called the run neutral. If you want to just turn the back one off, you just flip it to off. You get that red light for just a second. It goes to neutral. You can flip it back on at any time. Usually what I do is I reach over, step on the rear throttle and engage it at the same time, and bam, it's engaged. So the 8-speed was a pretty ingenious invention by those CAT engineers. It's a bulletproof transmission. It just works and works. You get the shift points adjusted correctly and your initial pressure. They shift beautiful. All right, do I take another pass through here? I don't think so. We'll move over this time. Hit the load counter. Away we go. At some point I gotta start loading up here, take this lump out, or turn around and come the other way. I can lock the throttles on. If I want to unlock the throttles, all I gotta do is bump the brake and it'll kick it off. So I've got a diff lock pedal and a trans hold pedal over here. That's the trans hold. This is the diff lock. So you can hold these machines in gear clear down to where it'll kill the engine. So if you're in a direct drive gear, it'll pull it clear down until it kills it. So a lot of guys have always asked me why I don't just step on the hold pedal when I come into the cut. And the reason is, if you're bouncing around or you accidentally let go of the transmission hold pedal, it can upshift while you're loading, which causes some slam bang, which ain't fun on the guys in the back. It ain't fun on me, because it takes puts slack between the bell and the hook, and then bam, takes it out. So number one and number two, if you took that shift lever and slammed it down, it would overspeed the engine. Number three has what they call a shift inhibitor, downshift inhibitor, and you could order it. I think it was an option. Probably should have been standard issue on these. So the shift inhibitor will not let you manually downshift it until the shift governor says it's time to downshift. So the Filthy Whore has a shift inhibitor, and so when he comes around, see, he's up there, he's waiting, he's always in the back. If we're coming into load, sometimes he'll be, so you got to slow way down if you're in third gear for it'll downshift into second. And so sometimes it can be hard to get it into second, so sometimes he'll just push in third. It'll be in second, but it's still in third, and then he'll just start pushing us And so if we keep our speed up, sometimes he can go all the way through loading all of us and load himself and stay in third gear. But if we drag him down too far, it'll downshift. So that's the one drawback to a shift inhibitor. And when you're loading 3 of them, that last machine is getting so much power from the 2 in the front that are loaded. It probably takes him about 10 seconds or less to heat that scraper. And so the other thing you have to be careful of is digging a big hole. So when you're push-pulling, if you're in a push-pull machine, what you do is you put your hitch lever down 1 notch and that drops your hitch. And then you come up behind with your push plate. You got to get your scraper bowl down, and that's going to adjust where your push plate hits. So you get yourself down. As soon as you make contact, you push this down 1 more notch, and that lowers the bail. And the bail has a valve in it. It maintains about 700 psi to the cylinder. That way is that it's going up and down, it just holds it there. As you're getting loaded, you can raise it up 1 notch, and that puts pressure to raise the bail. And so, uh-oh, Matt's going off the fill. As you, as soon as you take or put some slack between the hook and the bail's gonna automatically raise. And then you can turn to the right or left. A lot of guys say that's not how you're supposed to do it, but if you go watch how to operate push-pull scrapers, it's a cat video. I think I've shown it before, some of it. That's exactly how you do it, is you get yourself away from the back of that scraper. Now I know some guys say, well, if he stops, something happens. You know, you can run that stinger into the bumper, to the side bumpers, and bend the hell out of things. And I've seen a lot of push-pull scrapers with bent bumpers. But it's just stupidity. It's just piss poor operator. That's one of the things you don't do if you got a scraper behind you, is stop quickly. You just don't do it. Turn the heat off. Did I hit the load counter? I think I did, didn't I? I don't remember now. Boy, that's fluffy dirt after he ripped it. Holy cow. There we go. I'll just click it again for the hell of it. So we had a drone come and fly this whole area. So when we get done, we'll have him come fly it again to verify we're at the yardage that we bid to move. So everybody runs these different. They all have their own theories. Like I say, we always turn away from that stinger once you're loaded. You just don't hang there. So I turn around, I watch. As soon as I see him turn his front end, I'm turning around, because I know he's unhooked. So I'll come back and I'll drag this trailing, smooth it down, because here pretty quick we're going to have to be turning to the right. So you need this lump out of the way. Well, that's a big one. That's a big one. So somebody wanted to know how much fuel these babies burn. We're making about 3.5 minute cycles here, so fuel burns are going to be pretty high. So far we've been here 3 days, and the filthy whore didn't run one day, and we've gone through 600 gallons. This morning we had to switch to another tank. I didn't see the meter, what it was at, but we're probably going to go through, if we get 8 hours a day, generally we'll burn about 150 to 175 gallons per machine, which is actually pretty damn good. I don't care what anybody says. These old Cat PC motors are way more fuel efficient than the new stuff. I don't care what anybody says, those new ones will burn more fuel. They have some more power, so we've got a 3306B in the back of this one. It's rated at, originally it was rated 300 horse. I had to redo the injection pump on it when I first got it, because it was in a wood grinder and it caught fire. It only had like 300 hours on it. So I had them turn it down to 270, which is what a 637E with that same engine in it has for power. And it's a direct inject engine, and it just hogs fuel compared to the PC motor. Number 2 has a 3306 PC with an aftercooler. It's out of a D model scraper, so it's rated at 250 horse, and she burns I can't really tell you how many gallons, but, and then the filthy whore's got a 3306 early model. It's rated at 225, and sometimes you'll take the cap off and you'll put 20 to 50 gallons in it is all. It is so good on fuel. So since we don't have a lot of room to turn around, I'll pull way up here, give them, they did go the other way. So anyway, my whole point is, my experience with the electronic engines is they burn more fuel. And if you've got a DPF, they definitely burn more fuel, because every time they regen, they ignite a diesel fire in them. They have what they call an ARD head. It's got a spark plug in it. Sprays fuel in there, ignites it like a space heater, and raises the temperature in that DPF to like, I think it's 1,000 or 1,100 degrees, and that'll burn off the soot particles in the filter, turns them to ash, and then they go out the pipe. So if you're the man in the front, which works out really well, you got one guy that's always in the front, because this one doesn't have the bale and the push plate on the front. I determine where we load. It makes it so that you have a clean cut, because I know where I'm going to go again next time. So on bigger jobs with lots of scrapers, they're going to have a guy in the cut, in the barrow, telling you where to load. If they're running a push cat, they may still have a guy there, or if they got a good team of guys, they know where to load. You always load where the push cat is. You don't make the push cat chase you 9 miles. Anyway, since it's me and Jake and Matt, we work well together. We know where we're going. They know what I'm gonna do. Sometimes I mess them up. So I reach over and step on the diff lock, floor the rear engine. I haven't got the front one floored. As soon as they make contact, I can feel them. I'll go full throttle on the front. And away we go. And most of the time I can hardly tell when he's hooked up. That's another thing you gotta do. Jake's in the middle, so Matt can feel when I'm done loaded, because the speed comes up and the load comes off, so he knows to back off a little, so Jake can let go of the throttles a little bit so it doesn't just bang, pull the slack out of that bale and the hook. So if you're the guy in the middle, you got a lot of shit going on. Now, are you supposed to hook 3 of them together? I'm gonna say Cat doesn't recommend it. Years ago, we pulled the frog out of the filthy whore. And it was because the welds were broke, where the frog bolt or welds to the side of the can, and you can do some serious damage with even 2 of them hooked together if you're not careful. If you're in rock and you go along and hit solid rock and it stops both of them dead, you can do damage. You better be crawling under there and checking the welds on your frog, make sure they're still hooked up. It's a severe impact. I pulled the floor out of this one years ago with just the D9 behind me. And that was because where the top floor plate bolts or welds to the frog, it had wore the top of that off until the weld was gone, and it just folded it under. So that's another thing you have to watch and put some hard facing on it. The floor that's in this now has a 1/2-inch AR 400 plate on the bottom. It has 20-pound per foot ship channel welded to that, and then it has a 3/8 AR 400 top plate, which is 10 times better and tougher than they ever came out of the factory with. So the other important thing to do when you're loading is get your cutting edge in the ground. If you're just barely dragging it, they'll start duck walking, especially you get 3 of you behind you. And then all 3 scrapers are just going back and forth, duck walking. Looks kind of funny. Boy, that's soft right there. So we're going to try to push-pull as much of this as we can out of here, but it won't be long before we're going to be into obsidian. And at that point, we're going to have to start push-loading them with a cat, which means the filthy ore is probably going to get parked. If we had an operator for the 9, I just don't think the cat could keep up with 3 scrapers as short a load cycles as we've got going on. So the other thing I'm doing is I'm always splitting my tracks and driving somewhere else, because after we've ripped, this stuff's soft and it just helps to get it packed back down. You're never going to pack it as tight as it was before you ripped it. So this video is probably just going to be mostly me talking. Hope you don't mind, but it's the only way I know how to answer questions. If you have some other questions, let me know in case I forgot. Covered the fuel, covered how they work, shift, how the throttle works. What else do you want to know? Oh, I know what I want to talk to you about. So, this scraper right here, we bought in 1980, and or 79, 80. Anyway, the J.R. Simplot mine up on the Fort Hall Reservation, it's called the Gay Mine. It was named after his daughter. They had 4 of these. None of them were push-pull. They double shifted them for 7 years, put 14,000 hours on them. All the components had been rebuilt and exchanged by my cat dealer. I saw them they traded them into Lakeshore, which was the Terex dealer at the time. And the Terexes were $160,000 less for, I think, on the total package. Because I think back in the day, one of these scrapers was about 160, 70 grand. And anyway, they got them, and they didn't have stingers on the back because apparently that's an option with Terex. So they weren't happy about that. But anyway, if you remember back 1970, 1980, interest rates were 21%. It was horrible. But the gap between what you could make and interest rates it wasn't such a wide gap like it is now. So I went down and talked to them, and they wanted like $117.5 a piece for these things. And if you think about it, if let's say they were 160, 180,000 brand new in 74, 75, with 14,000 hours, that was a little overpriced. They were selling them, they were going for probably less than 50 grand in California right and left because things were so bad, guys were selling out. Anyway, I was just out of high school, so I told my dad, I said, this is what we need. We need one of these. And he said I was crazy. We couldn't pay for it, 21%. And I was optimistic and young, and I said, yes, we can. It'll load itself. It'll do so much more than your paddle scraper or a regular scraper. And so we did it, pulled the trigger. I talked him down. I paid $67,500 for this thing. Financed it for 3 years at 21% interest. The payments weren't bad. I'm thinking $2,600, $2,800 a month. It just ran and ran and ran for 3 years. Never had any trouble. The only trouble we had was a tire. But, you know, that stuff, it's the way it goes. Anyway, we went down to an auction, California, over by Fallbrook, not far from Fallbrook, and there was tons and tons of auctions going on, lots of contractors selling out. Anyway, I found this auction. It was Cursed Construction, and they had 16 666 scrapers, and then they had a couple of these with cabs, factory cabs on them. And Cursed Construction really took good care of their machines. Of course, everybody in California does. It's California. Can't have a shitty looking machine. So we went to the sale, and my dad just had to have a 666. And I said, no, we need to buy those two 637s. Then we'd have three, we could load anything. The 637s went for, I don't know, $35,000 a piece was all. It was a fire sale. And I think he paid $32,500 for the 666. So later on, when I got on my own, number 2 was for sale in Montana. God, I can't think of the name of the place. I think they got some, can't think of the word. Some mines over there, bentonite mines. Brodus, Montana. Brodus, however you pronounce it. Anyway, Another guy beat me to it and bought it. And then later on, during the 97 flood, we had an overpass tip over on I-15 because of the flood. And one of the dirt subcontractors was the guy that bought number 2. And he also owned the Filthy Whore, which originally was bought in a pair. I don't know whatever happened to the sister to it. It was bought by Burgraff Construction in Idaho Falls, brand new, and I don't know what year they are. The Filthy Whore is a 79P 321. So is that maybe a 71, 72, maybe? And they sold out, and they hauled the 2 Filthy Whores down to Tooele, Utah to their sale yard and sold them. And Mike Tupper was his name. Mike bought that one, and the other one, I don't know where it went. Anyway, I can't remember who got a hold of me, but they asked me to come up and help him. Maybe it was Mike that called me. And I had just put a stinger with a hook on it on the back of this and a brand new floor. And they were loading gravel out of a pit right along the freeway. And we eventually ended up getting into the water. We were loading in the water, but if you got 3 of them, you could load gravel pretty well. So I went up there and worked with them. And then it was probably 2 or 3 years later, Mike decided to retire, and so I found number 1 or number 2 and number 3 for sale, I think through Machinery Trader. So I called him, went out and looked at him, made him an offer, and he took it. I think I paid 25 grand for the Filthy Whore and 35,000 for number 2. Brought him home. I worked and worked on number 2. They were pretty ratty. And then I think it probably took me another year before I got the Filthy Whore going. It was bad. Needed a lot of work. So it's kind of funny, I ended up with the Filthy Whore. So I am the 3rd owner of that since it left Cat. And it's got rear fenders on it. They've never been bashed up and bent. It's hard to find them with fenders on them. Love the fenders because when we're out covering rock piles, the straw and stuff gets up on the rear radiators. We have to put door screen on them. And the ones Filthy Whore with fenders just doesn't get near as much stuff up on the grill. So I did a video called How to Run Push-Pull Scrapers, and I'll put a link to it right up here in the corner of the screen and one in the description. And if you want to know a detailed explanation of how to operate these things, go watch that. I got some guys telling me I shouldn't turn the rear motor off. So that's something I haven't covered. So when I'm hauling a long distance, I'll get loaded, get up to speed, and then just turn that rear motor, the sync switch, to neutral and let go of the rear throttle. It saves a horrendous amount of fuel. Absolutely horrendous amount of fuel. And you don't need it. You just really don't need it. And it's not going to hurt them. They're getting lubricated. It's running. So if you really want to save a lot of fuel, you just turn it off. And in my business model, I have to save any way I can. I just can't throw money down the toilet. And that was one of the points I was going to make about buying a scraper, paying 21% interest. So the value of the dollar has dropped so badly, and the gap between the cost of goods and what you make and what I can charge for these is so horrendous that, so I was about 19, 20 years old when we bought this. And then I went on my own when I was about 25, 26, I think. Looks like Matt's going to take a break here for a minute or something. Uh-oh. Oh, there's my camera. It's still on there. So we'll just take a break here for a second. Oh, he's taking his coat off. Let me just turn you off here. Alright, back to work. Where was I? Oh, so if you're a younger guy and you wanted to get into this business because of the price of things, you'd have to go buy a couple of these old machines or one, but you better be able to fix them or you're not going to survive. It's the only way I've survived is by fixing them myself. Your problem with these is you're running into parts availability, cats obsoleting parts like crazy on older machines. So that's one of the problems. Now, you can repower these with a 3406E C15. I've seen it done. They do share a lot of commonality with the newer ones, your planetaries, your transmissions, the gears. The rear transmission is still the same, other than it's electronic. The transfer gears for these you've not been able to buy for 10 years, but we buy D model transfer gears and put in them. It changes the ratio just a little bit, but it's not enough to notice. Your other option is to go find some old D's or some E's if you can afford them. But our government has just caused so much inflation since 2007 and up. It's just climbed and climbed. And like I say, that gap between what you can make and the cost of shit is so horrendous. it's just gotten practically impossible to get into business with these. Now your other way to do it is you got to go big. So you got to get out there and bid taxpayer-funded work, because that's where the big dollars are, but then you got to compete against everybody else. It's just tough. I have a niche business, and I really don't have any competition that does what I do. So, but by the same token, I can't charge what a big contractor would charge. I just can't do it. Nobody's going to pay me the kind of money you need. I have to cut the wowie out of this slope here. I want it for too long. Okay, so now we're loading together and moving together, so I don't have to worry about when I turn around anymore. Just get unhooked and go. So that's one of the reasons I own old equipment, and I keep it in good shape. The old ones will do everything the new ones will do cheaper. The uptime is actually better because of the lack of electronic crap that is on these newer machines. Electronics just inherently don't last. Maybe someday they'll get them to where they'll withstand the shock, the heat, the vibration, and make them so they have good longevity. But right now, they just don't last. And I don't know if that's on purpose or if it's just the way it is. I don't know. It's probably a little of both. I'm sure when they manufacture stuff for the U.S. military, it has to be able to withstand incredible amounts of abuse. One of the things I see with CAD is the wiring harnesses have gotten extremely cheap, and so they have a lot of trouble with wiring harnesses because, again, everything's made cheap. And I blame large businesses. They want to make the maximum amount of profit. They're not really interested in longevity, not worried about you, the customer. And I think they've discovered that, you know, if everybody does it, a customer doesn't have a choice. He's got to buy the garbage, put up with it. And there's nothing you and I can do about it. Because I say, well, it's all, you know, it's all like that. What do you do? Can't stop working. Can't find a different line of work. It's a beautiful day. We don't have a lot of wind, so this is going to work out good to start cutting this over here. Gonna work out good. So what I gotta do is I'm gonna have to load in here and then drag them over that way to straighten this up. This hole isn't gonna be perfectly straight because it narrows up here, because we got on the left, my left side here, I got this embankment and I can't cut it off. Yeah, the newer machines have way nicer cabs and air conditioning, heat systems, but you can quiet these up, put AC in them, make them like the new ones. So the other thing you're going to have on a big job is you're going to have a motor grader keeping things smooth all the time. And you kind of, if you got a big spread, and it's kind of pretty much what it's mandatory. You're going to have a water truck, you're going to have a blade, you're going to have all this support equipment, which costs more money, but if production is your goal, that's the stuff you gotta have to make production. So we got load counters, we're keeping track of our loads. It's not an exact science because you can forget, you can double tap it, you might not push it far enough and it doesn't roll the numeral over, all kinds of stuff. That's why I had Darren come with his drone and drone it, because we have that's one of the things I've discovered about technology is you just don't get a lot of argument when you say, hey, this is what we've moved, this is what it says. They can't, how are they going to argue with that? And that's a whole nother topic of discussion, technology, grade control. It's cool stuff to have, but how accurate is it? I don't know. They do all these state jobs. You don't see wood in the ground anymore, and they're out blading the grade on the road. Nobody's checking it because it was done with GPS. And it's a cool tool, don't get me wrong. I'd love to have it for certain things. I'd love to have it on my grader. It'd make me a lazy operator, but man, would it be nice to be able to just put in a design and cut it and be done with it. Alright, so I'm going to turn you off, bring you back later today. Show you the slate switch and sync switch and all that fun stuff.